I must say that Mr. Shoebridge demonstrates a very poor understanding of India's constitutional and political history. And there is no linkage between NPR and NRC. Citizenship Amendment Act does not discriminate against the minorities. Mr. Shoebridge also doesn't make any mention of 350,000 Kashmiri Pandits who had to flee in 1990 when they were being targeted by the separatists in Kashmir. China's forceful occupation of a territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Mr. Shoebridge, in his excitement, says that Australia must review its trade ties with India because of India's alleged violation of human rights and passing of Citizenship Amendment Act and forceful occupation of Kashmir.
Hello and welcome to India News TV for another round of informative interview which is of immense political, strategic and diplomatic significance. Recently, Australia's Greens legislator, Mr. David Shoebridge, levelled serious allegations against India concerning human rights violations, targeting minorities and the passing of Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019. Similarly, many other legislators from across various cities in the United States have also levelled allegations against India. To understand the substance in such allegations, I spoke to Dr. Ashutosh Mishra, CEO of Institute for Australia-India Engagement, who possesses over 25 years of experience in India's foreign policy, defense and security engagements. He's also one of Australia's leading Asia experts. Hope you enjoy the interview. Dr. Mishra, welcome to the interview.
Thank you, Karthik, for finding time and coming to speak to me. It's a pleasure.
Mishra, you must have heard about the recent allegations that have been hurled by Mr. David Shoebridge, the legislator from Australian Green Party, when he has accused India of violating the human rights and also targeting minorities ever since it has passed the Citizenship Amendment Act. He has said that this action of India is unprecedented and historic. How do you see that?
Thank you, Karthik, for the question, and I'm glad that you asked that question, and actually you pointed out that Mr. Shoebridge said that it's a historic act of the government of India. I must say that Mr. Shoebridge demonstrates a very poor understanding of India's constitutional and political history. If he had done a little bit of research, he would have known that in 1947, when India became independent, under the first Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the Congress Working Committee had said that we'll have to heed to Mahatma Gandhi's call that all minorities in the region, in the neighboring countries, will have to be given sanctuary in India. So this was in 1947. And after that, in 1985, I must emphasize over here, the Rajiv Gandhi government under the Congress had amended the Citizenship Act of 1955, which said that this act will now allow for identifying foreign citizens in India who were living illegally, defranchise them and expel them from India. And here it is important to also to tell our listeners and viewers that people use interchangeably NPR and NRC. There is a vast difference and there is no linkage between NPR and NRC. NPR is National Population Register. Okay, it was founded and started by Congress in 2010. And what is this? This is basically based on the 1881 census, which takes place in India regularly. It registers economic status, size of the household in India of families. It does not record religion, it does not record a nationality. And second is the NRC, which is the National Register for Citizens. This is what was amended in 1985 by Rajiv Gandhi government. And not only in 1985, after that in 1987 again under the Congress government, then in 1996 and 1997 under the United Front government, and then later in 2010, 2011 and 2012. The same different governments had used and invoked the act, the very act, in giving a sanctuary to minorities from neighboring countries. In Rajasthan, Congress ruled Rajasthan recently. The state had given refuge and citizenship to minorities coming from Bangladesh. So saying that this is unprecedented and this is historic shows a very poor understanding of India's political and cultural history on part of Mr. Shoebridge.
In that case, how do you respond to the allegations that this act discriminates against the minorities?
That's again a very good point that you have raised, and a very good question, I must say. Again, I'm sorry to say Mr. Shoebridge is again showing a very poor understanding of what actually Citizenship Amendment Act is. For the viewers, I must clarify here that the Act, Citizenship Amendment Act, does not discriminate against the minorities, but it is actually aimed at providing sanctuary to religious minorities in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh. And why? Because these are Muslim countries, and minorities living there over the years have been persecuted and have been targeted. Recently, the UN report said that in Pakistan, over 1,000 girls from the minority community were converted. In Bangladesh, if you go and see, you will find that 23% was the number of minorities in 1951. Now that has plummeted to 9.2%. In Afghanistan, there are only 0.3% of the minorities left, and only 700 Sikhs living in Afghanistan. So this act is basically providing refuge to Hindus, Sikhs, Parsis, Buddhists and Christians in these countries, because where else will they go? They can only come to India. So this is what this Citizenship Amendment Act does, that it provides refuge and protection to these minorities. So saying that it's targeting the Muslims only, which is very gross misunderstanding of the Citizenship Amendment Act.
There's a view that the subsequent actions which are being taken by the Modi government are violating the human rights, considering the United Nations Commission for Human Rights has recently accused India of violating the human rights. How do you see that?
As far as this question is concerned, I will say that India's situation cannot be seen in isolation. Okay. I will say that when you are looking at India's defense and policing and security challenges, one needs to look into the overall context. India's challenges cannot be seen in isolation. For instance, India has been criticized again and again about what the security forces do in Jammu and Kashmir. Mr. Shoebridge has also made a mention of that, and he is referring to United Nations. Then I must also respond and remind Mr. Shoebridge that Mr. Shoebridge, in India since 1990, 40,000 people have been killed in cross-border terrorism. And these attacks and these kind of violence and killings has happened because of cross-border terrorism perpetrated by jihadi groups which have been supported by Pakistan, in contravention of the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 2625. Mr. Shoebridge doesn't make mention of that. Mr. Shoebridge also doesn't make any mention of 350,000 Kashmiri Pandits who had to flee in 1990 when they were being targeted by the separatists in Kashmir. How unprecedented is it that the Kashmiri Pandits have to live in their own country like a refugee? He doesn't talk about that. He doesn't even talk about the targeting of the minorities in Xinjiang in China. And he's taking a very myopic pot shot and view of what India has been doing. So targeting India, saying that it's violating human rights, and not taking into account the entire context in which India is situated at the moment is I think grossly unfair. And also UN has said that there has been 17% rise in refugee intake by India. It's a UN report. So saying that India is guilty of violating human rights, it's totally wrong. There have been cases, I concede, but there have been court-martial taking place in Jammu and Kashmir. The Indian Armed Forces has been, sort of very vigilant in terms of ensuring that such things don't occur. But with a sweeping brush, saying that India is guilty of violating human rights is unfair.
Dr. Mishra, Mr. Shoebridge also said in his statement that India has occupied Kashmir forcefully. Do you see any substance in that?
I think Karthik, this charge by Mr. Shoebridge, it's not only laughable, and I think it's a very serious charge that he makes. And I think he should apologize for making such a charge. Because if nothing, he should read India's history. I would urge him, he should read India's history and history of Jammu and Kashmir.
Can you please expand on that?
In 1947, when India became free, Kashmir was an independent state. But after that, on 26th October 1947, Kashmir signed the letter of accession and became a legal part of Indian Union. And after that, the Article 370, which gave special status to Jammu and Kashmir, Let me remind you, it was only a temporary provision. The constitution says it is a temporary provision which was done away again by the Modi government last year in August. And that act, when it was passed, it was hailed across India that now India feels complete. In Kashmir, you have to understand, as I said, that 40,000 people have lost their lives. India faces an existential threat from these terrorist groups, which have not only targeted India, but they've also targeted coalition troops in Afghanistan. They pose an existential challenge to regional security. And this is what India faces every single day. Mr. Shubridge doesn't talk about the forcible occupation of Jammu Kashmir itself by Pakistan. UN resolution has said that Pakistan needs to withdraw its forces. It has not withdrawn till date. Mr. Shubridge doesn't talk about that. Mr. Shubridge also doesn't talk about China's forceful occupation of a territory of Jammu and Kashmir, the Aksai Chin. He doesn't talk about that. Mr. Shubridge also doesn't talk about Pakistan giving 5,130 square miles to China illegally through a boundary agreement. He doesn't talk about that. And he's talking about India. In fact, India should say that Jammu and Kashmir has been forcibly occupied by Pakistan and China. So that's why I said Mr. Shubridge should do a little bit of more research before making such a ludicrous claim. And Karthik, I must also add over here that Mr. Shubridge, in his excitement, says that Australia must review its trade ties with India because of India's alleged violation of human rights and passing of Citizenship Amendment Act and forceful occupation of Kashmir. It's a booming bilateral relationship economically between Australia and India. And Mr. Shubridge should understand the context in which the entire world is now looking into various business and trade options. Australia is then looking for an alternative after what it had to face after the outbreak of COVID-19. We have faced trillions and trillions of dollars of hit because of COVID. We cannot afford to see an order which is not based on rule, which is not based on transparency, which is not based on accountability. And that is why Australia is looking for a very sound alternative to China, is looking to boost its trade ties with India. And in that context, saying that Australia should review its trade ties with India, I think again it's again a laughable submission that Mr. Shubridge is making. And he has got no understanding of geopolitics. It seems he has got no understanding of bilateral trade and economic relationship. And under what circumstances do governments take such a decision, and why is the Morrison government so keen on bolstering ties with India in the economy and business and trade? I think Mr. Shubridge showed a very poor understanding of that.
Okay. On that note, Dr. Mishra, thank you very much for talking to us and answering all the questions which had been confusing a lot of people for a very long period of time.
Well, thank you so much, Karthik, for coming and talking to me, and it's been a pleasure. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify some of these facts and figures and arguments for our listeners and viewers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for watching the video. If you like it, please press the like button, share your views in the comment section, and please subscribe to India News TV for more such updates.